I'm Anthony Atala, and I work at Wake Forest University at the Wake Forest Institute for Regenerative Medicine. And the reason they asked me to do this is because some of the work that we do at the Institute is actually related a little bit to the storyline that you're going to see tonight. So as you know, the plot tonight is a novel by Gusto that was written in 2005. This film was actually made in 2009, and it was actually shown in 2010 to great reviews. And the film is, and you know the general plot of the movie, which is basically that, you know, children are being raised to act as, who are clones, so they can donate organs to other people who are just like them, right? That, you know, that's the general plot. So I'm not giving anything away, because if you just read the description for the movie, that's what they would have told you about the movie. So I'm not going to tell you anything else about the movie, because I'll ruin the movie for you. But let's talk about cloning. So let's talk about cloning a little bit. So really the whole concept is that these people are being raised so they can donate organs to other people who may need them. So how many people here know what cloning is all about?
Not all, but...
That's pretty good, okay, that's pretty good. Okay, well let me tell you what cloning is. Cloning actually, scientifically, I'm going to tell you what cloning is. Scientifically, cloning is when you take a cell from a patient, from anyone. We can take a cell from anyone here tonight. And did you know that every single cell in your body has all the genetic material needed to create a whole new you? Did you know that?
Yeah.
Every single cell in your body, any cell in your body has all the genetic information necessary to create a whole new you. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So what happens is when cloning actually occurs, and as you know, animals can be cloned today. So animals can be cloned. When you take that cell, the way it works is you take that skin cell, let's say. We'll take a skin cell. And by the way, you're shedding skin cells every day. Every time you wash your hands, you're shedding hundreds of thousands of cells. So we just take one of those skin cells, and we then take a donor egg. Okay, a donor egg. And you know how donor eggs can be obtained? So, you know, basically the way you can get a lot of donor eggs is that you can actually give drugs to moms who would like to have babies. Women who would like to have babies and they can't have babies. And the way that fertility works is that they go in for shots or medications. So instead of creating one egg that month, you're going to create many eggs. So you're going to super ovulate. So instead of making one egg every 28 days, this one cycle, you may come up with 25 eggs. And now the doctor's going to go in and you're going to retrieve those eggs, those 25 eggs, with an ultrasound. They do it just in the office, simple procedure. They go in after they super ovulate. You take all these eggs, and then you take a sperm, and you create a baby for fertility. That's how babies get created, you know, for fertility purposes. But instead of using a sperm and an egg, what you can do is you can take a skin cell and an egg. Instead of the sperm, you take a skin cell. And now what you do is you take just the core of the cell, the nucleus of the cell, the central portion of that cell. That's all you're going to take. And you're going to take that central core, and now you're going to take this egg that you have, and you're going to empty the egg, and you're just going to leave the egg shell. Okay? So instead of mixing up the sperm and the egg, you're going to mix the central core of your skin cell with the egg shell. You're going to put that central core inside that eggshell. And now you're going to burst it with energy. And guess what happens? You create a clone. That's how a clone's made. So instead of using a sperm and an egg, which is all the genetic material of the male and all the genetic material of the female, what you're doing is you're taking a donor egg, but taking all the genetic material out of it and just leaving the eggshell. And you're taking all the genetic material out of that central core, putting it inside that eggshell, you burst it with energy, and now you have a clone, an embryo that you can create that has the same genetic information of that skin cell. And that skin cell could be male or female, right? You can clone a male or a female. Either way, you end up with a clone. And that's how clones get made. Any questions about how clones get made?
What do you mean when you say burst of energy?
Yeah.
Actually, you just hook up a little electrode and you just give it a little shock. That's all you do. And that's how it actually starts dividing. So when you connect the sperm and an egg together, the sperm does it all in itself. The sperm has that little burst that'll actually go through that egg and it'll actually initiate that burst of energy that goes inside the egg so the egg starts dividing. But you don't have that burst with that central core of the cell, so you have to give it a little burst of electricity. And you just give it a little burst of electricity and it starts, just like Frankenstein. Didn't you read Frankenstein? I'm kidding. But isn't that funny how science fiction leads to real science? And even when they did not know that, right? Because, remember in Frankenstein, you have the thunder going to the electricity that makes them go a lot. So that's how clones get made. Now, as you know, animals can get cloned, right? So that's how cloning was first described. Actually, cloning has been described for decades, many, many, many years. But it was not till the 1990s that a large animal was cloned, and you'll probably heard about Dolly, right? Dolly the sheep. Everybody knows Dolly, most everybody knows Dolly the sheep. It was not really the first cloned animal. Actually, animals had been cloned for decades before mice had been cloned. But this was the first large animal which showed that, in fact, a human could also be cloned. But in reality, cloning is not allowed. It's not ethical. So cloning is not allowed for humans. Although it is allowed for animals, and animals are in fact cloned for genetic reasons, for the production of the same type of materials. So today, animals can be cloned, humans can't. But now this is the important fact. Did you know that there are clones, human clones walking around all over the earth? Did you know that? You didn't know that, did you? They're called twins.
There you go.
Dr. McConnell, that's not fair. You're a physician, and you know that. No, nothing from the peanut gallery. That's exactly right. Identical twins are actually clones, believe it or not, because all the genetic material came from the same area. So identical twins are actually clones. So we do have human clones. You've met them, you've seen them. If you were at school with any identical twins, you actually saw identical clones. So let me tell you something else. So in this movie, of course, they're raising these humans are being raised so they can be organ donors, right? That's the plot. Well, guess what? You're never going to believe this. But it's so it is really a big coincidence. But guess how the first human organ transplant was actually done? The first successful human transplant. It was done between identical twins. Isn't that amazing? The first successful human transplant done by Joe Murray, who was a surgeon in Boston, who did the very first organ transplant, a kidney. He actually did it from an identical twin to an identical twin. So guess what? The concept of using cloned organs for transplantation is not new. The concept of human clones is not new. What is new is this concept that we now can control that. We can now control that. We can actually now take this skin cell and an egg and put it together. How's that relate to the work we do? Well, we do not clone humans. Just want you to know that right now, and we don't even clone animals. The way that we create organs is by taking a cell from a patient. So we take, a very small piece of tissue from the patient to create the organ. And, very small, less than half the size of a postage stamp. And we take those cells and we expand them outside the body. And we grow those cells outside the body, enough cells to actually recreate the structure. And once we have enough cells, let's say we want to make a piece of muscle. Okay, we just take a very small piece of muscle from the patient, very small biopsy, tiny little piece. We grow the cells outside the body, we multiply them, we then take a scaffold of material, in the shape of the organ, we coat that with the cells, very much like baking a layer cake, if you will, and we then place that right into the patient. We let it cook, if you will, first, like a, so I always talk, it's very much like, I always say it's very much like baking a layer cake. You're laying these cells one layer at a time. And then you put in this oven-like device, let it cook, if you will, and then once it's matured, you put it back into the patient. So that's what we do.
Do you need an egg to do that?
No, we don't need an egg, we don't need a sperm. All we need is a piece of tissue, because we're not cloning. We're actually making the organs without cloning. But we are making the organs using your own cells. And your own cells have all the genetic material that you need to create that organ. But we're not creating a whole new human, we're just creating that specific organ. So that's how we do it. So let's say that we want to make an organ like a blood vessel, for example. What we do is we take, cells from the blood, we expand those cells outside the body, we create a scaffold in the shape of a tube, a material in the shape of a tube. And these materials look like a piece of your shirt or your blouse. We just tubularize them. We coat the outside with the muscle cells, the inside with the lining cells, very much like baking a layer cake again, if you will. We put in this oven-like device, let it cook, and once it's cooked, we can put it back into a patient. That's how we create these tissues and organs. And we then are able to implant these, and because these cells are from the same patient, they will not reject, right? Because they come from the same patient. And also, what happens to that material we put in? Well, the material that we put in, those materials that look like a piece of your shirt or your blouse, and we tubularize, or we create into whatever shape we need, right? It could be a flat structure like skin. It could be a tubular structure like a blood vessel. It could be a hollow non-tubular organ like the bladder. Whichever way we shape it, these materials are acting only as a cell delivery vehicle. Once you put them inside the body, the material actually starts to go away. These materials are made with very much the same materials that we use for stitches in surgery. Have you ever had stitches in surgery? And they go away, right? You don't have to come back to have them taken out. They just dissolve. These are the same materials that we use for these scaffolds. And then you're placing these cells on these materials, and as these cells start to attach to these materials materials start to dissolve. They start to go away, just like stitches in surgery. So what happens? Well, this is an interesting thing that happens. We're using these as delivery vehicles, right, to bring that organ back into the patient. But as these materials start to go away, the cells sense that they're not in the right footing. They're just losing their stability, and they sense that. So guess what? They start making their own bridge. They start replacing the material that we put in with their own bridge material. And 6 months later, the material that we put in is fully gone, and the cells end up laying their own bridge. And now you end up with the patient's own cells and the patient's own bridge. And because the cells came from the same patient, they will not reject. And that's how the technology works. Now, of course, I just told you this story, and you probably think this is so easy to do, right? You just take this piece of tissue, push a button, there's your organ, right? Nothing could be further from the truth. Actually, that little snippet that I just told you took us about 30 years to figure out how to do, right? We've been at this now for about 30 years. And so it took a long time to figure out how to actually make that technology work. And we're just starting to put this stuff into patients in some areas, in some tissues. We have about 8 different tissues and organs that we've already put into patients using these strategies. And for us, the future is to really keep applying these strategies and technologies so we can benefit more patients and we can actually tackle more medical problems for the patients we treat. So, I think that we are at the time point that we need to stop this discussion. But now you know what cloning is all about, and now you know the research that we do and how it relates to this movie. So just remember, when you watch this movie, you don't really need a clone. You just need to come to the Wake Forest Institute for Genetic Medicine.